Good afternoon and welcome to the Safer Communities Overview and Scrutiny Committee. Before we start the actual meeting, can we go round the table to introduce everyone who is participating today? If we can start on my left-hand side, we have Mrs. Jacqueline Tranter, who is the Corporate Scrutiny Officer, followed by Mrs. Helen Deacon, who is the Senior Corporate Improvement Officer, Mr. Geraint Thomas, who's Member Services Officer, who's in charge of the webcasting, Councillors Burnett and Parish, Mr. Tim James, Assistant Chief Legal Officer, and Mr. Christopher Slade, who's the Democratic and Member Services Support Officer. What I'll also be doing is introducing the officers and the heads of the service as the meeting progresses. My name is Councillor Kemp and I'll be chairing this afternoon's meeting. If we can go on to agenda number 1, which is the apologies. Chris, are there any apologies, please?
Yes, Chair, we've received apologies from Councillor Brian Morby, Councillor Barry Taylor, Councillor Neil Waite and Councillor Pamela Cameron.
Is there any more apologies from the floor? No? Okay. Moving straight on to agenda item number 2, which is the declarations of interest. Can I bring in Tim James, Assistant Legal Officer, please?
Thank you, Chair. Just to remind members, please, that any declarations should be recorded in the green folder alongside the attendance register. Having looked at the agenda, members, I'm not aware of any declarations, but if you have any queries or questions, please let me know now. Has anyone got any issues? Okay, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Tim. Moving on to page 5, which is the agenda item 3, minutes of the last meeting. Members are reminded that the minutes relate to the previous item, which was the developing local housing market private rental sector. If the committee can go through the minutes of the last meeting for both accuracy and to confirm that they are correct, please. Starting from page number 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and the last page, number 11. Can I ask that a committee member moves that the minutes of the meeting are indeed correct?
I'll move them, Chairman, as correct.
Thank you. And now can we very quickly go through them again to see if there's any further updates? I don't believe there are, but we will double check. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. That's fine. If we can move now on to agenda item 4, which starts at page number 13. Can I bring in Jackie in regard to updating members of the 6 action points, please?
Thank you, Chair. The recommendations of the last committee meeting have been sent to the relevant executive member, and all the information that was requested at the last meeting has been circulated to members. I believe Kim Pugh would like to update the committee in respect of 4.3 on the action sheet, Kim.
It's just to say that at the moment, even if we did have a response of any of those people, we don't have the management capacity to actually run a litter enforcement scheme at the moment. So I think that with the committee's approval, I would like to park it for now and to see if there is something we can do jointly with Blaenau Gwent when environmental health merges with them, because they already use a litter enforcement scheme.
Are committee members in agreement with that?
But, I mean, I think everyone knows my opinion on that. I mean, we shouldn't be in car parks, private car parks. You will say that it is to enhance the whole area. I mean, when this scheme was in Kingdom and before, what a waste of time, waste of resources. All they were doing was targeting people, innocent people in their cars or vans, smoking, whatever. They weren't there for the purpose. They were there when we first brought it in was for dogfowl and things like that. They spent 90% of their time in private car parks. It's not our car park. It's not Torvine's car park. It's Asda. Let them do it. Let Asda and Sainsbury's monitor their own litter. It's not ours. And I'm totally against it, as I always have been. And the last time Kingdom were here, and I had all the figures. I mean hundreds, and 300 or 400. They were in Llantanum. 90% that was town centre. Out of that, there's one dog fouling called. The rest were people in private car parks being targeted by these people, sat in their cars, and people come and told me, sat in their cars, spying and waiting to dive out to grab somebody for dropping a cigarette butt or smoking their own private vans, already work-related, and being given a FPN for that. If they were on the streets, I wouldn't have anything to say about this today, but they're never on the streets, and as far as it comes to town centre, private enterprise, nothing to do with Torvine, and that's my statement on it.
Thank you, Councillor. I would agree that the vast majority of the councillors within the council would agree with your testimony. But as Kim said, I think it would be better if we park it for the moment instead of dropping it, and should an occasion come about where we can legitimately revisit it, I dare say we will. Moving on, is there any other questions or further information that members would like in respect to any of the other action points, please? No. Can I then ask a committee member, move that the information given is duly noted?
I move that, Chairman.
Show of hands? Yes, thank you very much indeed. Okay, moving on to page 15, which is the first of the report, which is the update report, progress and impact of accepted recommendations. I'd like to read the suggested scrutiny activity. The committee are invited to review the impact of recommendations accepted and implemented by the executive relating to completed scrutiny activities by scrutinising the impacts, timescales and progress detailed in the recommendations update. At this point, can I bring in Jackie for further guidance, please?
Just to say, Chair, that within the appendix, the recommendations are listed, but there's also an outline of the progress and the impact, and that's what you're asked to look at today, just the progress and the impact of the recommendations that you've previously made. So the officers are here to answer any questions you might have on that.
As Kim will be here for the full afternoon, I've rejigged the appendix a bit. So if we can first of all turn to page number 19, which is the performance of development control. Can I ask Norman to come down? Norman Jones is the team leader for development and control, and hopefully he will be able to update members in regarding the previous recommendation, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, in taking them in order, the first executive response was in relation to the IT system. The situation there was after protracted procurement process. We did purchase a system in October 2015, and we are currently looking to put that in place. We've got a go-live date on 21st of June. Officers are actively engaged in training sessions with the provider. However, in terms of our, there's a lot of officer input into getting the system up and running and transferring data, but that is ongoing, and hopefully that will give a good public interface with the planning system, allowing applications to be viewed by public online, and comments and consultation responses, which isn't available now, but it's a requirement that Welsh Government have sought. So whilst we, not as quick as originally had hoped, we are working towards that.
Sorry, in regarding the any further information or questions, can I suggest that we look at the recommendations one at a time, and then if there's any further questions, they can be put in. I've only got the one, and I think you partly answered it. I'm glad that there's an end date, but is there a reason why it has been taken so long?
I think it's just
Sorry. It's down to the complexity of procurement and gaining, looking at the various options that are available, and that has been done in-house effectively with members of led by Richard Lewis, head of development management and building control, with assistance internally within the department. So effectively negotiating on something has taken a significant amount of time, and that's been done effectively within the department, and that obviously to secure the best option, and trying to look forward that this will be effective in the future for whatever potential reorganisation may occur more generally. So we feel we've got a system which is likely to be far better than what exists at the moment, and robust and easy to use, which will improve efficiency both in terms of our determination work and obviously the interface with members of the public and yourselves.
Any further questions?
Thank you, Chair. No, I think what Norman just said then, and my question would have been the simplicity of it. I mean, we all know IT systems can be so complicated, and for the general public to get onto the system, it's got to be really simple. Couple of buttons, put the plan number up and whatever. Now, with the problem you're having, is it because throughout the borough there are problems with IT systems? I'll just give a couple of instances. Endless Community Council, their website, and it's all to do with Blenavon. Is it just your department getting it right, or is it to do with Blenavon as well, the IT system? Because there's lots of problems around.
There's going to be an interface with the SRS. Now, I'm not au fait with that. I haven't been involved in any of that details, but there's clearly a lot of background work to put this system in place. There's a lot of data to be transferred from our existing system. We can't simply just lose that, and that involves us, as a department staff being involved in that, in transferring it and setting the system up so that it meets our particular needs. So in terms of all our policies and standard conditions that we use on a general basis, a day-to-day basis, all those will need to be inputted into the new system. So to make it robust from our point of view. However, as I understand it, the system will be simple to use, and that was seen as an essential for the system that we procured.
Recommendation 2.
Yeah, the executive to review resources should performance decrease to ensure service delivery does not suffer. It's the intention to identify further funding to provide and maintain additional capacity for development management team on a temporary basis. So in terms of that, we had a person who was on a temporary position when we last reported. That was extended. However, he then left the authority, but we managed to backfill for the period. That person is now up and running, and that has been extended to cover an officer who's gone off on maternity leave just recently. So that person is up to speed with planning applications, not having been in local government for some period. So that will help us going forward during the period of certainly when this officer is on maternity leave for the next potentially 12 months. So in terms of our that's helped us in terms of our quarterly figures, which there has been a significant improvement in the last quarters which were reported to Welsh Government. Those were 85% being dealt with within 8 weeks and 84% in the last quarter. So that put us in the top 6 in Wales. With such, we're very pleased with that. But I think I would give a note of caution that potentially with the introduction of the IT system and the amount of officer work that's got to go into that, we may see some bottoming out of that over. Hopefully it won't be for a significant period, but over this transition period of the introduction of the new computer system.
In regarding it states that the quarterly figures have significantly improved. If it would have been nice to have known those figures, because that's a good news story at the end of the day. I don't know if you can provide those because obviously it is a good piece of work that's been undertaken, if you like.
Yes, we can, and they were, as I said, it was 85% in quarter 2 of 2015 of applications being dealt with within 8 weeks, and then in quarter 3 up to the end of December, the return showed 84% being dealt with within 8 weeks. And as I said, on both quarters we were in 6th position in the so-called league table within Wales. But as we keep saying, it's not all about statistics. It's about the quality of the decision that is reached.
Statistics do help, though.
They do help, yeah.
Any questions? Okay, recommendation 3, please.
Yes, it's agreed that an independent customer satisfaction survey would be carried out on a 6-monthly basis by the Wales Data Unit to reduce, this is to reduce to an annual survey, but will include benchmarking. This annual customer survey results are due in May 2016, so we're still awaiting the results of that, so there's nothing to report back on that, Chair.
In regarding into July, it says the results of the independent customer survey for period October 14 to 15 are now available. Would they passed on to the committee at all? Do you know?
I don't know whether they were.
Could those be passed on to us?
Okay, yeah.
Any other further questions? No, that's fine. Recommendation number 4, please.
One of the new requirements of the Planning Bill, which forms part of the new performance framework, is for local planning authorities to complete a self-evaluation report. First draft is required by October this year and was reported to the executive member. We actually reported this to a planning committee. It was submitted to Welsh Government in November 2015, and it was reported to Planning Committee on the 19th of January, and set out in detail that the performance has improved, and most Welsh Government targets were being met.
Any questions? Well, thank you,
Thank you,
Norman,
Chair.
if you like. That's it.
Thank you.
If I can call Neil down, if possible, please. Now, Neil Howell is the Head of Housing and Business Support, and if we can turn to page number 23, and if we could do a similar thing and go through each of the recommendations, and if members have questions, we'll ask them as we go along.
Thank you, Chair. First recommendation was that the action plan related to the self-valuation project be reported back to committee, providing members with an update on progress against recommendations. What we did say subsequently was, and it was agreed, was that whether bring a report back, or if that wasn't available in terms of the pressures on the work programme of the Scrutiny Committee, to actually include the self-evaluation exercise as part of the visioning session for this year's programme. We did include the self-evaluation project as part of that, and obviously it hasn't featured specifically in the work programme for the committee. However, because of the remaining two recommendations, which I'll come to now, in effect, you are getting an update and progress on the action plan that resulted from the self-evaluation project. So in effect, I don't think you're missing out in terms of not having a specific report related to this particular topic.
Any questions?
Okay, so the second recommendations was to consider engaging with partners with the results of the self-evaluation, determine how they would like the issues addressed in an attempt to improve service delivery. Some really positive outcomes that resulted from this recommendation. We held a housing summit with and invited all members and our housing partners. The summit was held in September last year, very successful. The focus of the summit was to provide feedback on the progress against the existing local housing strategy, and to start thinking about emerging priorities for the new local housing strategy, which will come into effect next year, 2017. So that was a really positive event, attended by well over 80 people. So what we were able to do is share information and share outcomes from our key partners as well. So it wasn't just the local authority delivering an update in terms of delivering against the local housing strategy. We were also, we had presentations from both Bronavon and Melin Homes, and they obviously give an update to members who attended the summit on what they've been doing to contribute towards the delivery of the local housing strategy. One of the other recommendations that emerged from the action plan was for the local authority to develop an annual operational plan, which we've now put into motion. So every year, during March, April time, we will engage with all of our partners to develop an operational plan which looks back at the last 12 months. So for the 5-year period of the local housing strategy, we will have five annual operational plans. So that will give us a rolling programme of updates and progress against the local housing strategy priorities. We've also revised the terms of reference of the Strategic Housing Forum as part of the action plan to make that more relevant, and also we've revised or reviewed, the membership of the Strategic Housing Forum. So we have invited other partners to the Strategic Housing Forum over the last 6 months, which perhaps hadn't previously been invited to come along. We've also used the forum, I suppose, to develop the action plan following the self-evaluation exercise, and also reported back the action plan to the forum, and we've also got an inclusive forum. So I suppose some of our providers will be on that forum. So we've shared the outcomes of the self-evaluation exercise and engaged with the inclusive forum in terms of developing the action plan. So they've played a part in both shaping the action plan and now the delivery of the same.
Any questions? No?
Okay, last recommendations is an issue very close to Councillor Parish's heart, I know. Consider developing an additional recommendation and or amend the recommendation 4 within the action plan in order to specifically address negative comments made in relation to homelessness and the home seeker service. As a direct result, I suppose, of that, the feedback, we have developed, if I can circulate these to members, we've developed a home seeker easy read guide and also a flow chart. There's one there for you, Chris. A flow chart of how the home seeker process works. I've got further copies up there, Jacqueline. Sorry, I haven't. So that has been; those are posted on the Torvine Homes website, and the intention there is to make it as easy as possible for members of the public who are interested in joining the Common Housing Register and understanding how the home seeker service works. You know, to do exactly that, to understand that. So it's trying to simplify, put in plain English, I suppose, what applicants who are interested in applying need to do, how the process works, how they bid for properties if they're interested in properties, etc. We've also developed a housing services guide as well, which does give broad details about what the housing service does in Torvine and has useful links to exactly where you can get more information. Again, Torvine Homes website. We've developed that website significantly over the last couple of years to make sure that we've got as much information as possible available to local residents, anybody interested or having an issue with, or a housing issue within Torvine, to gain relevant information and advice and guidance about the housing service.
Any questions? Norma? I must be honest, in regarding the housing self-evaluation pilot and the recommendation, I've only got ticks, which is a bonus. If there's no further questions, thank you again, Neil. If I can bring down Kim, and this is in regarding, could I turn to page number 17, which is the environmental enforcement options for future service delivery. And again, this is Kim Pugh, who's the head of public protection. Again, if we can go straight to recommendation number 1, please, Kim. Thank you.
Recommendation number 1 was that we re-tender in the hope of gaining a more favourable response than we had the first time. No tender applications were received, so the contract with Kingdom ended on the 28th of October. The impact now is that there's no routine enforcement of litter or of smoking works vehicles undertaken, because we don't have the resources to have people out there just walking the street looking for something to happen. Pest control officers are carrying out a limited number of proactive patrols about dog fouling and dog controls, targeted specifically at areas such as play areas, walk to school routes, where there's a greater risk, or areas where we have a high level of complaint, particularly if people can actually provide the detail of when dogs are walked. It does make it more productive use of our time, obviously. Signage is being improved throughout the borough. It was paid for from the receipts from the fixed penalty notices. It was one of the recommendations of the committee that part of the money be used for that. We did offer signs as well to community councils and also to schools for school grounds, and most of the schools, I think, took up the offer of free signs. Those are in place. We have got some left over. If anybody else still needs a sign, we have a few left there. But I would have to say that the little enforcement that is currently undertaken will decrease further if the pest control service is cut as expected in the budget round now. We are hoping that we will be left with one officer who would be able to do some dog warden duties and may be able to team up with an environmental health officer to do a limited amount of enforcement. It's difficult because you need two people as well, so it is very resource intensive. The impact delivered, it's difficult to quantify what the drop has been, the same as it was difficult to quantify what the improvement was when we were doing it. But we have had a request for enforcement from Pontypool Town Centre fairly recently, but unfortunately we couldn't help with it. I couldn't spare the resources to just be in the town centre at that time.
Did you get information or the data regarding from the customer services and the complaints, whether there's been an increase or a decrease in regarding residents reporting the dog fouling over the last 6 months?
We get spates of dog fouling reporting depending on weather and things like that as well. So if the weather is bad and people aren't out unless they're walking the dogs, you don't get as many complaints. But we have those stats ourselves because the complaints about dog fouling come into us. We do liaise with neighbourhood services as well, because obviously they're part of our department now as well. We're all one department and they're in the next room to us as well. With the street scene operatives for their qualitative view as to whether things have got worse or better. And they thought while the scheme was operating, litter was better within the town centres. And now they are seeing littering starting again. But dog fouling, they were never particularly involved in. It's pretty constant for us, unfortunately. There are still some dog owners who are very irresponsible. At least at the moment, some of the hanging the bags in the trees seems to have gone with the publicity that was out there, but it's still an ongoing problem and very difficult to tackle.
When do you think it'll be reviewed again?
Depending on what happens in the budget round. Now, if that remaining officer goes, I would have to say that without buying in a service, it's not going to happen. Other than we would still obviously go in response to complaints of people if they say someone walks the dog past my house. I don't want to be a witness or anything, but I know the man lives in number 15. We would actually approach them and write a letter and ask them to be a responsible citizen, really, and obey the rules. If, however, we've just got a report that everybody walks their dogs on this bit of grass, it's very difficult, or if there's a dog just let loose, there will be some new legislation coming in for new dogs to be chipped, but obviously that doesn't account for the hundreds of dogs that are out there that aren't chipped at present. And the problem with chips as well in dogs is that people move, even people who really love their pet and really are responsible owners, they move, don't replace the details that we hold. And last weekend we had a dog taken into the kennels and a very distraught owner ringing to say that had we picked up her dog, and it was all directed to the wrong address because they hadn't changed the chip. So we've been putting cards through the wrong door because they haven't been updated. So it's an ongoing problem, really, but we would, obviously we investigate any complaint that comes in, but it is also much, much better for us if a member of the public can say, this happens at such and such a time, or it's always, because dog walkers are fairly stick to a nice routine. They go out at similar sort of times. So if they can be specific as to this happens at 6:30 in the evening, we will make every effort. But obviously we don't operate an out-of-hours service, and we haven't to find 2 officers to do that. So it's limited what we can do.
Any questions? Ron?
Again, it's coming back to when Kingdom were here. I don't see how we could even gauge whether his dog fouling's got worse, because we never caught any anyway. So it was very, very minimal. Again, the resources are not there, and to battle this, I mean, again, all right, the town centre with the FPNs, and that was the only way to keep the system going, to pay for it, as Kim knows. But when they weren't out on what I call out in the grounds where the dog fouling goes on, there's no dogs in town centre hardly. So to battle this, we have to find resources to have them not in the town centre, out down the parks. And one of the worst places was Norma's Park ward at the canal. Absolutely dreadful. I mean, you go there, there's dog walkers all day long, responsible ones, so for a lot of irresponsible ones, and it's in the play areas, not in the town. And that's what we've got to be looking at. If we're talking about littering and dog fouling, we have to look at it seriously, not in the car parks of town centres where we can raise money to pay for it. But we all know, if you look, I got all the statistics, I'd look in there, Morrison's car park, I think they'd spend a whole day practically there. Then at Sainsbury's car park, then to Asda car park, and they didn't like to get out their cars sometimes. And people have been told, you can see them sit in their cars, waiting and watching. That's not what it's about. On the foot, you've got to be and be seen, not sitting in cars, preying on them. You mean? So if they're going to be out there, let's get them on their feet, not in their cars.
Unfortunately, without any further resource, there is going to be nobody out there. You know, I totally accept your comments, Councillor Burnett, but it's enforcing dog fouling is always difficult. I don't know whether you've seen it on the television where they're now doing DNA testing of some dogs as a way of proving that dog is there. But actually, for us enforcing, we are actually having to witness the dog in the act of defecating and then approach an owner. It's hit and miss at the best of times. And even if you know that the person walks their dog at that time of day, you've got to be in the right place at the right time and close enough to see what's happening. So it does cause difficulties.
One of the worst things are the people that open their door, let their dog out, and the dog will always practically go at the same place. And it's never on their garden. It's always on somebody else's garden. And you see it, a dog will, you know when he's going to do it because he's got these signs, but it's never on their own back door, is it? And I know somebody in my ward, their dog did it regularly, so he shoveled it up, he knocked the door, he put it on his doorstep, and he said, what's that? He said, belongs to your dog. He said, anymore. He said, it'll be put through your letterbox. But they do it, that's the irresponsible ones. They open the door, and the dog just, and it's not safe. Even on the roads, you see them running around. But we see that regularly. As you said, Kim, I've said to people, you haven't got to give your name. I said, you can give it to me if you want. Just tell me what number it is, and we'll get a letter sent there. And that's a bit of a fright enough to start. But again, you know, it's like everybody, oh, no. They all want it settled and, you know, get the system working as long as they're not involved. But we have to all be involved.
I know, but we can talk for a lot longer on this particular subject, but I think we need to go on to number 2, please.
Recommendation 2 was that we increase the time scale for tenders to allow maybe smaller companies to apply. And we did increase the time scale to 2 months, and we would consider having that time scale on any further tenders that we brought out. Particularly, we also do tenders for licensing as well, for the vehicle testing. So because they're local companies, we would try and give them time to actually get a response in. So that was accepted in full, but just failed to deliver anyone applying to the tender in this case.
In regarding the total number of recommendations made, there was a total of 3. Obviously, we've just covered 2 which have been implemented or considered, but there's one missing.
I think the third one was the recommendation what any fines were spent on. It was a list of things that members would like to see done with the money, because as I explained, the money was ring-fenced to environmental improvements. And we followed the recommendations that members had given. But I think that was complete some time ago, because we had to spend the money within a financial year. So it all happened in a bit of a rush at the end of last financial year.
Yes, Chair, that was implemented fully and reported back to the committee last time we looked at the recommendations, yeah.
Okay, if it's okay with members, if we can turn to page number 26 now. Can we pause it a second, please? Can we pause it a second? If we can turn again to, as I said, page number 26, which is the Welsh Audit Office report, delivering with less the impact on services and citizens, please. Again, recommendation 1, please.
Recommendation 1 was regarding training for members to better equip them to scrutinise performance. The executive member response was quite lengthy, detailing the sort of training that had been provided. And the update in January was just that, in addition, a members' seminar was held in November to inform members of what the services are within neighbourhood services, and including planning and public protection now, the larger department, and at what cost. That was a well-attended members' seminar. Also, there is the ongoing activity around the scrutiny of budget proposals, which took a different format this year, but I thought was very successful, really, and really felt that we were challenged on what we were putting forward by members. So that's all I wanted to say on that, really, that I thought that additional training had been provided and the scrutiny sessions were effective in that area.
Questions? No? Thank you. Recommendation 2. To continue pursuing the Tascomi data system and investigate, if necessary, whether further funding would be required to support the system. Tascomi is still being developed. It has been procured by several councils across Wales. I think only 2 of them to date are actually gone live, because the system is being developed as it happens, really, in response to what people actually want and need. So I think it is going to be a fair way down the track before I can report back any real progress in this. The merger with Blaenau Gwent, we had thought, may provide a savings in this regard, in that we procure it once. But actually the contract is written in such a way that we would pay as if we're paying for 2 systems separately and for the transfer of 2 lots of data separately. So it would take, it's not really financially viable. It would take us years to recoup the outgoing, the initial expense. I'll get the words out in a minute. So we will keep a watching brief on it, but we are also considering what else is available and if anything is provides a better service. But we do keep, I wouldn't like you to think that we don't keep lots of data. We collect data on every action that we take. We're probably one of the best in the council in, I can tell you how many letters were written and how many phone calls made and all that. So we do keep data, but the data system we use it's not the most straightforward, it's not the easiest to use, and it's not the most up-to-date in terms of its IT skills needed or anything like that. So it would be better to have a newer technology solution, but appreciate that money is a major obstacle here. But it may change. If reorganisation comes in, the company is doing Tascomi, we will obviously have to rethink what its pricing structure is, because those councils won't exist anymore. So it may change. I know that there's a couple of questions which are going to be coming up as part of the report, but we'll address those in another agenda items. Any comments in regarding that? Number 3, please.
Number 3, statutory services not being totally reflected within previous corporate plan priorities. And the comment came back here from the deputy leader because he was part of the recommendations crossed over into other people's responsibilities, and it was noted, and the new corporate plan will ensure that all services, be they statutory or discretionary, will be referenced in some way within it. Obviously it's not one that I'm personally responsible for delivering, but that was the response we had off the Deputy Leader.
Comments? No? Okay. If we can... Page 29. This is the Environmental Health Review of Services held on the 14th of October 2015. Recommendation 1, please.
This links quite in nicely and is almost like a preview of the report I'm going to be doing, so the order of the agenda's worked out quite well here. The first one was to consider exploring collaboration for environmental health services to help with economies of scale and in particular reduce costs, improve efficiencies and to maintain services. That is accepted. We are looking, following the work we've done with trading standards and licensing, to now work to merge environmental health services, hopefully for them to be complete by August, September this year. I've given a time scale of 6 to 8 months because we do need to get some approvals and things in there, and that always puts a few weeks on it. But we are hoping we'll see the same benefits for environmental health as we have for the others.
Number 2?
Number 2 was to go through the current options that were put forward. Members actually decided which option they would like, and all I could say really on that is we have taken all the comments that members made on board, and a lot of them are to retain the service or to retain it at the moment and then seek to make savings through the collaboration with Blaenau Gwent. The only one which won't be followed is the pest control one, unless that's changed. The vote at council says that it should remain. What has been put forward is that we will maintain one pest control operative who will do some contract works in school, some sewer baiting, and will really offer a dog warden service in the main, as opposed to pest control. But the rest of them were taken on board as they stood.
Comments? Yeah, Siobhan?
With the pest control, Kim, as we all know, people have to pay for it now, and people won't or whatever. I had somebody ring me up, and she said about rats. I said, well, the council don't do it anymore. I said, I personally do my own baiting because I know how to do it, and safely. But there's so many people out there who haven't got a clue, and I was talking to one guy when there was a private pest controller, and he was saying, but they leave it out on bird tables. I mean, is there any way, information we get out to the public, how to control pests themselves in a safe way? It's because anybody can buy poison down at B&Q, which I do, but I've got the proper boxes, big boxes, and I wear gloves, but not everybody knows. It's a shame, really, but I mean, there are people that can do it responsibly, but there are people who haven't got a clue what they're doing, you know?
I would be reluctant to put out any prescriptive information because as soon as the poison changes, the rules go with it, really. All I would recommend is that if anyone is going to use any pesticide, whether it's against rats or whatever, even if it's to spray for green fly on your roses, that you read the instructions, and if they do say there are safety precautions, that you actually realise they're there for a purpose and do act on them. So if they say wear goggles, please do wear goggles. If they say wear gloves, wear gloves.
Any other? No? Oh, okay. Thank you, Kim, for that. In order to move forward, can I ask that a committee member moves that the information given and stated within the report is noted, and that we are happy with both progress and impact made to each of the recommendations? Are you happy with that?
Yes. Noted.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you very much indeed for that. Moving on to page 33. Now again, this is the second report, which is the update report on the progress against adopted action plans, the suggested scrutiny activity. The Safer Communities Overview and Scrutiny Committee are invited to review the progress against adopted action plans referred to and considered by the committee, and outline any issues identified through the monitoring activities, and make any relevant recommendations or comments for consideration by the Audit Committee in the annual progress report. So if we can turn to page 35, and again, if Kim can lead us through recommendation 1, please.
Recommendation 1 was to revise the best practice standards to align the work of environmental health with national strategic priorities, to identify the wider contribution of environmental health in delivering strategic priorities of Welsh Government, and identify the benefit and impact of environmental health services on protecting citizens. Infograms have been produced, which I brought to one of the visioning meetings to actually help put the message out there of what environmental health does deliver. I would like to say that we contribute greatly to health and well-being of citizens through the secondary level, providing good housing, in decent environment, protecting the food that you eat, those sort of things. So those are out. They're also available in Welsh, and I am looking forward to any opportunity of putting them up somewhere to bring that to people's attention. So anything where we've been asked to provide a presence, whether it's for careers or whatever, that the posters go with us. The best practice standards are currently being reviewed. They reflect national and local priorities, and they will also reflect really a change in circumstances, I think, for environmental health services, because there are less people involved, so we're having to cut cloth accordingly. And a briefing paper is being prepared to inform political manifestos in the run-up to the Assembly elections, to promote what we do and that our services are important. So we are, through our professional associations, doing a bit of lobbying. Not personally, but it's anything that gets the news out that some of the services, which are very small portions of council budget, still are very important, and are thought of being as very important by the citizens of the area as well.
Comments? No. Number 2, please.
Number 2, we've sort of updated on the actions from the last one, because it was regarding training for members. So unless there's anything else on that part of it, the training for members, I won't go over that again. Are you happy for me to carry on? Or?
Yes,
yeah?
yes.
Number 3 was to improve engagement with local residents over the planned budget cuts and changes in service. The update really is all fees that are set by Public Protection are being reviewed as part of the budget planning process to ensure we maximise income within the constraints of current legislation. Citizen engagement was carried out as part of the budget process in 2015-16 to ensure residents' views were heard. And my information was that that would be happening again around this budget process, but not by individual sections. It was being carried out corporately, and some of those meetings had happened immediately prior, I think, to the members' scrutiny sessions. So that's happened as far as I'm aware. Recommendation 4, improving efficiency and value for money in identifying statutory and non-statutory duties of council environmental health services, agreeing on environmental health priorities and an acceptable standard of performance for them, and improving efficiency and maintaining performance at the agreed level. Much of this was covered in the report to the Scrutiny Committee of the 14th of October, where we did a lot of work on considering the priorities for environmental health and also what level of performance that we wish to have. As part of the budget setting process, all non-statutory functions were identified, and that's part of the reason we've been talking about pest control so often during the meeting, because that is probably the only non-statutory function that I have left in my service area now. Service standards are currently being developed. These are being done jointly with Blaenau Gwent, where we have merged services so that members of the public will know exactly what they can expect and within what time frames. And we will monitor our performance against those standards so we can see if there's any fall in the standards or an improvement, as we would hope through the merger, in that we are more able to do some of the things.
Any comments? Well, as that was again the last recommendation, can I ask that the committee member moves that the information given and stated within the report is noted and that we are happy with both progress and impact made to each of the recommendations? Yes. Okay. Thank you much indeed. If we can move to page 39, and which is item number 7, and this is the overview and scrutiny report. If I can read the suggested scrutiny activity. Which is, the committee is asked to assess whether the collaboration is delivering the intended benefits and outcomes. Number 2, consider whether the collaboration should continue in the same way to include environmental health services. Can I introduce Mr. Stephen Osborne, who's the Trading Standards Manager who's working out of Blaenau Gwent? That's correct. Have you got the questions, Ron? No. You've got that? Yeah. And I'd like a set to be given to Kim. And, that's fine. I've realised that the two of you are facing the questions. If you want to make any comments at any time, please feel free to do so, if you like, as opposed to one person leading it, if you like. If we can go straight to the questions themselves, which is question 1. Knowing that the collaboration of Trading Standard Services Pan-Gwent was explored but did not take place, why did Torfaen County Borough Council explore a collaboration specifically with Blaenau Gwent? And from a Pan-Gwent stance, what was learned in regard to the negotiation process undertaken to ensure that the merger of Torfaen County Borough Council and Blaenau Gwent Trading Standard Services would be a success?
The collaboration with Blaenau Gwent was for several reasons. The first was a willing partner, in that Blaenau Gwent were also looking to collaborate. We were both very keen that the Gwent-wide collaboration had happened. So it was pushing at an open door, really, to look to collaborate with Blaenau Gwent. Also, there's quite a good fit between us and Blaenau Gwent in the terms of the complaints we get, also the size of departments. And Blaenau Gwent was in the same position as us in having a very small trading standards department, which was realising that you can't cover every function, you have no resilience when people are off ill. So we were both in the same position and could both benefit, rather than if I'd looked to Caerphilly would have looked at to take over, they'll just provide the service and we'd have been swallowed up in it because there's nothing in it for them. So it was to have a collaborative approach and to get the most benefit out of it for the least amount of pain, I have to say. From the Pan-Gwent stance, I have to say it founded in the end on almost we're down to the real nitty-gritty of budgets, in people questioning down to the last penny what people were putting in to the collaboration. And I don't know whether that was partly because of the size, trying to get 5 people to all agree and to all be in the same position when the council budgets were being set and changing that position every year. is very difficult. Caerphilly had also already come out with a political stance that they didn't need to collaborate with anybody, and Caerphilly were the first ones to pull the plug, that they felt that they would be sort of subsidising or whatever the other councils, and Newport in particular had some issues with their budget in that there was a vacancy saving built in, which only became apparent as the negotiations went. How we've approached it with Blaenau Gwent is a much looser arrangement. We are both fairly pragmatic, both myself and Dave Thompson, who is Steve's immediate line manager, my position in Blaenau Gwent, are fairly pragmatic, and we want it to work. So we have accepted that we won't, at the outset, merge departments or go through to-be transfers or whatever. We will actually use the staff as a joint resource. They're authorised to work across both areas. Steve will talk to you afterwards about, I'm sure, about the team plan. It's work that's being done in small teams jointly. It may all be done in Torfaen, if that's where the need is. It may all be done in Blaenau Gwent. And all we are actually putting into it financially is the share of the cost of the managers and a small supplies and services budget, which we have agreed we are both putting in the same amount of money, which is 12,000 each in the year, to cover the essentials like sampling and everything. So there's no arguing back and forth over, well, our salary bill is slightly higher than yours, our this is slightly... We have said we have to say, this is what we've got, what can we do with it?
I'm glad you've mentioned a couple of themes there, if you like, and in regarding the questions, there's more which will be pulled out in due course as such, if you like, but that was a very good overview, if you like, I must be honest. Any questions in regarding one? Number two, environmental health will be the next service to consider for collaboration within the next 6 to 8 months. Will this decision be taken to Cabinet? And with the merger of trading standards services is at the moment, or where, sorry, the merger of trading standards services is at the moment, is 8 months sufficient time to ensure that Torfaen County Borough Council is to make the right decision?
I think that the 6 to 8 months was the time frame for it all to happen and be up and working. It will be going to Cabinet for the decision to take environmental health forward, which is part of the reason as well for this report, to get the views of members on that. We can learn an awful lot over the way it happened with trading standards, because a lot of the problems that we've had in getting up and running effectively, and I'm sure Steve will agree, have been on getting the IT to work for both sets of staff in both authorities. So whichever building they're in, it doesn't matter, they can still access both their own things and the other authorities' systems. Now, it took some time before we got to that stage. We went live on the 1st of October, and I think it was halfway through January before Steve could view the team diaries of his whole team in one go without having to stand on one leg in the corner balancing out the window on. It was a very difficult process. But because we now know how that works, all we need to do this time is to put in, this is the list of requirements for what people want. So the IT will be sorted straight away. We hadn't intended doing the whole of environmental health in a lump. We did think that even that would be a staged approach, so that we're looking at, first off at doing the food, health and safety team, because they are all doing the same work with the same competencies. We know to be doing that work at the level that every member of staff is at, and you can tailor the work exactly to that. So that's likely to be the first part to go. The public health team that I run doesn't sit immediately in line with the one in Blaenau Gwent, in that the housing function is differently organised. So while the food one can be evolving, we can be sorting out the difficulties around that. So I think that 6 months would be optimistic, but it's achievable within 8.
And that's from the Cabinet agreeing, if you like. Any supplementaries? Question 3. This is under issues and findings and the benefits of collaboration to date. Can you clarify that both Torfaen County Borough Council and Blaenau Gwent staff are working across both authorities? Where are Torfaen County Borough Council staff based? And have there been an increase in travelling time and financial costs?
If I could take the last 2 first and then hand over to Steve, for Steve to give some of the explanation of what's happened jointly. Torfaen staff are still nominally based at Ty Blaen, as they were before the collaboration. What's actually happening is the collaboration is based on agile working. If somebody is working in Blaenau Gwent that day, they would travel direct to Blaenau Gwent and start on the district, wherever they're going to go, and they can choose then whether they either go into Blaenau Gwent offices and work, if they need to write up anything, or come into, drive on their way home back to Ty Blaen and work there. And that works both ways. There is, if we're doing a project, which Steve will describe some of the things we've done, those have been joint working, where 2 people are delivering the project over the whole of the 2 areas. So it's just coincidence they've been in Torfaen this week, they may be in Blaenau Gwent next week. We're conscious of the fact that it could increase the mileage, but against that, we've only got 1 person going to the meetings in Mid Wales instead of 2. We've also got people who have been encouraged to work at home, more than maybe they were before, so that there are days where there is no mileage, they're at home writing up, and it's doing that. And people group their visits. If they know they're coming down this direction because they've got a meeting, they will try and pick up visits while they're down here, rather than do 2 bits. I would say the only people I would say there's been an increase in travelling time have been the 2 managers, both Steve Osborne and Steve Bendel, who's managing the 2 licensing teams, because they are spending probably half a week at the other authority. So there's an increase that way, although in Steve's case it's on his way in to come to us, so it's not an increase then, unless he's had to go to Blaenau Gwent for some reason first.
In regarding, I know we're going into the IT a bit later on, and homework, and if you like, not so much the agile working, but certainly the home. Has there been extra purchases when it comes to IT equipment to allow people to work at home, and has that been costed out, if you like, in regarding the setting up of these projects?
Both teams were already agile working and already had laptops. My teams have, since we moved to Ty Blaen, been set up with laptops where they work. Some of them work all around the borough. You regularly see Matthew Bartlett sat down in the Palc typing things up if he's between appointments, or he sits in his car, he sits in here. They have really embraced mobile working, and Blaenau Gwent was set up already because Blaenau Gwent have already gone down this route as well. So certainly for trading standards and for environmental health, there would be no additional cost. For licensing, I believe we have to purchase 1 laptop, and that's for our admin officer, who doesn't normally leave the office but now may be travelling around. And similarly in Blaenau Gwent, the people who have been mainly office-based will now need laptops. But that's the only cost of IT equipment.
Would you like to contribute anything, Steve?
Thank you, Chair. Can I just start by saying thank you for inviting me to the meeting. It's a pleasure. It's my first one in Torfaen. It's a pleasure to be here. Just to build on what Kim has already said, really, that at the outset of this project, there were 3 work streams that we progressed, which was an IT work stream to iron out all these challenges that you're scrutinising today. There was a finance work stream to sort out the budget, and we've made some agreements there now, as Kim has already alluded to, that the budget will be a joint budget from April, 12 grand in from each authority, so we've made some progress with that. And the other one was the staff sort of issues, where HR from both authorities were involved to discuss the staffing arrangements, etc. So we've made progress on all of those work streams, and then separately there was the operational matters, which myself and my service managers in both authorities were all in agreement with to plan the operational plan for the team. So that's the backdrop to it all. So all of these things were being discussed sort of in a strategic way on a regular basis, actually, is probably fair to say. So we have made some progress. The IT were the biggest challenges, as Kim says, and probably in the last month or so, really, we've made some breakthroughs with the biggest challenges on all of that. So it's also been quite good because Blaenau Gwent has signed up to SRS now, the Shared Resource Service for IT. So as a result of that, that collaboration as well, the floor that Public Protection are on in Blaenau Gwent, in the Civic Centre in Ebervale, now has Torfaen's Wi-Fi standard on that floor. So if Torfaen staff go into that floor, they can access their own systems quite easily. So there's been progress made, not just within our department, but further afield with IT as well. But we've got more information, which I'm sure will come out during the questions, Chair.
Any supplementaries? Norma, number 4, please.
Thank you, Chairman. In 6.4, outcomes of the report, the performance has been gauged. What evidence have you based these outcomes on? It's on pages 42 and 43.
I won't go into the financial ones because they're detailed further on in the report. The staff reductions, in that we have one manager between us in both instances instead of 2, so obviously there are savings there. At the moment we have some vacant posts as well. This may be as a saving, but we just wanted to see first if we combined the staff we have, whether that worked for the service or whether we did need that extra resource. We thought rather than put someone in a post and then tell them 3 months later you're not required or whatever, it's better to actually see what we require and go that way. So that was done. We have actually had to replace a member of staff who left because her role was essential, really. It was accepting all the referrals from the Citizens Advice Consumer Service, so that role was essential. So we're leaving that one on the table, really. We have actually just recently taken on someone for just 3 months, part-time, to give us a little bit of a hit to get things up to date so the team can start going forward then on a better footing. The increased service resilience, I think just looking around the office on a Friday afternoon, I know that one is working, because if you've only got a team of 5 and 2 of them are on leave, you then are struggling to even have a body in the room. Whereas now, if a member of the public phones and there is no one in Torfaen for whatever reason they're out working, they get transferred to a Blaenau Gwent Trading Standards officer, so they will get the same information, the same advice, and they won't know that it's some from a different council. They will just get Trading Standards advice, and it works both ways. So that has been excellent. The websites have both been changed to mirror each other. Consistent message. I think Blaenau Gwent's isn't quite done yet, is it?
It's not live until April, yeah.
Theirs was being reviewed anyway, but we took the opportunity to do ours and get it the same, so it would be the same website through. Yes. Actually, it's maybe a bit of a saving because we only have to translate one, so we can hope. Members of the public shouldn't know who they're dealing with. We've actually combined both letterheads And the only difference that there is on the letter is the person who's dealing with will put which address they should contact them on. But it could be either authority. I think we've got significant staff buy-in, which has been very good. Right at the start, we had a staff meeting with everybody together, and we were all, I think, I have to be honest, say quite surprised by how positive people were, how keen they were to take it forward, and since then they have collaborated with Steve in doing the service plans. They've all had an input into the structure, they've all had an input into what they think the ongoing issues are going to be for trading standards. So they have been really involved from the bottom up in sort of developing the service, which has been good, because I think, if I'm honest, we had got a bit stale in that it's easy to say we're doing this because we always do it. This has prompted a real rethink on, we've only got this many people, what can we do? And out of that, what should we be doing, and what should be our priorities? So we've done quite a lot. I know Steve is going to undertake a strategic assessment early next year. Oh, early this year now, aren't we? We're this year now, 2016, to actually look at what are the trends nationally. And, well, Steve, you can probably explain what you're looking at. The questions further down, right, so I will wait till then. So that we will be focusing all our resources on the areas where there's the greatest need from consumers. So,
just one thing. Do you think you'll have problems, can I say, with the geography of, you know, the different boroughs? You know, if somebody rings up and wants to ask you a question about a specific place or a specific shop, do you think there'd be problems with that, or do you think you can overcome it?
Local knowledge is crucial in sort of our area of work, so there's always a place for local knowledge. I would say that, I mean, for example, I've got staff in Blaenau that live in Torfaen. Some of them used to work across Torfaen in the former Gwent as well. So there is local knowledge from Blaenau into Torfaen as well. And slowly but surely, the staff are working in each other's areas and gaining more local knowledge as well. But what we've tried to do where possible when we are allocating complaints or allocating investigations is we'll initially look at officers who are close to that area to begin with, who've got the local knowledge. There may be reasons sometimes, maybe good operational reasons, why we do hand it to someone outside who is not known in the area. You know, there may be good operational reasons where that benefits us to have somebody coming in. But other than that, the history, for example, if it was a shop or retail premises, we would still need to check the history that's on the Torfaen database. So even if it was somebody outside, Blaenau Gwent officer that was dealing with it, in deciding what action we would take, etc., we would have regard to the history, that the local knowledge in the Torfaen database, etc., and speak to the officers as well. There's regular team interaction with all of this. There's regular team meetings, and there are small sub-teams within our team who will speak to each other. So they're encouraged to meet each other regularly, discuss ongoing matters like this, to try and alleviate any problems with the geography and concerns about lack of local knowledge, that kind of thing.
Question 5, issues and finding specific examples of joint working. Can we explore more in regard to an example of joint working? How has joint working been undertaken to improve food standards inspections within Torfaen, and I'm going to put a caveat, and then across the two authorities?
And over to Steve for this one.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, food standards is an interesting one, actually, because it's treated slightly different to perhaps a lot of other trading standards matters, because the FSA requirements require us to inspect in a slightly different way to other parts of trading standards. In terms of Torfaen, we've increased the capacity, really, with an extra officer from Blaenau Gwent who deals with food standards. So Torfaen now has gained, because our officer in Blaenau Gwent is competent in terms of feed hygiene inspection, whereas Torfaen didn't have anybody that was able to do the feed hygiene work. So we got an officer in Blaenau Gwent coming in, doing the feed work in Torfaen, and the payoff is that Torfaen food standards officers can then also do some of the food work in Blaenau Gwent to pay off for the fact that she's doing the feed work in Torfaen. So we've got an increase in capacity, an extra officer to deal with food standards. Across the two authorities, where this has helped us, there's a good example of an allergens project, food allergens, which we've recently undertaken across the two areas. Now, that resulted in, there was something like 56 premises we visited, 61% non-compliance. That was across the two areas, which we've brought into compliance as a result of that project. Now, whether or not we would have had the capacity to do a project like this without collaboration, it's questionable. So that project, being a collaborative project as well, has been reported up to the FSA, the Food Standards Agency, I should say, who've been very positive about that project, and sort of they welcomed the collaboration and the collaborative work we did on that, and that was specifically on allergens. And with allergens, that could have a serious impact if there's allergens non-compliance and people aren't aware there's allergens in a particular product. So that's probably a good example of it.
Can I just interrupt you?
Of course you can.
I would just like to say that the allergens legislation was fairly new, so it was a good reason for us as well to go out and get some more information out there, because people, small businesses in particular, were struggling with the requirements of the legislation. So it's been not a big stick sort of inspection. It's been a help them along to get it right. Thanks, Steve.
Absolutely. So food standards, as I said, is a good example. The rest of trading standards, we're looking at a strategic assessment, as Kim's already mentioned. The strategic assessment is part of implementation of an intelligence operating model. And the intelligence operating model is a UK-wide model for trading standards, where we look at all the intelligence being received from the Citizens Advice Consumer Service, CACS, and other means. It could be anonymous tip-offs, it could be inspection results, it could be expert knowledge from the officers. All that information is put into a report, into a strategic assessment report, and looked at. From that, we will pull out projects that we feel needs to be done. Allergens was ahead of the game, really, because of the new legislation, and we've already done it. But there'll be more work done on that now leading into the new financial year from April, because the strategic assessment's underway as we speak, where we'll pick up more food standards inspections to food standards sort of areas that may or may not need special attention, in addition to the ongoing inspection regime, which has to happen for the Food Standards Agency anyway.
Question 6, again, carrying on a similar theme, issues and findings, planned joint working. This is in relationship to section 6.6. The first bullet point, again, can we explore more in regard to an example of planned joint working, in regarding the first bullet point, which is how is the strategic assessment progressing, and the third and fourth bullet point, how will we be consulted in to the development of the joint enforcement policy and joint service standards, and then what part does Torfaen County Borough Council constitution have in regard to the development of such documents? That's a tasty one for you.
The enforcement policy is something we have to have, and we've got one at the moment, and the enforcement policy is agreed by the exec member when it's written, and that will be what will happen. It will be developed jointly, but it will go to both Blaenau Gwent's exec member and ours for approval. Similarly, the service standards within Blaenau Gwent have been in place for a while. The service standards within Torfaen and within neighbourhoods and regulatory services in particular are being developed specifically in response to the peer review that was undertaken. What we are looking at is, for Torfaen Public Protection Services, we will take Blaenau Gwent's as a starting point and see that they meet our standards and our needs, and we'll discuss any differences and come to an agreement between those, but those then will go for member approval as well. So there will be a buy-in across the council that they are appropriate standards for us to deliver. So the Constitution really isn't affected because we would be approving it in exactly the same way as we would normally. We're just having a joint approach to that. What's happened up to now, if we write a report or an update or anything, we draft it together, we then put it into two separate formats because the formats are different, but it's the same content, but just reorganised to fit the formats, and they go forward for approval. And that'll be the same with the Cabinet report for environmental health. It will have the same content in it, but I will write a Torvine report, Dave will write a Blaenau Gwent report, but they will say the same thing.
And the strategic assessment?
Yeah, as I mentioned, the strategic assessment is based on the intelligence operating model, so that's where it's come from. The benefit now is we've now got a wider area to look at, so we now look at Blaenau Gwent and Torvine for the strategic assessment rather than just a small area of Blaenau Gwent, for example. So that helps us because it looks at all the intelligence, all the information available to us that we can pull out there, and then gaps in that information as well, because there might be that, let's say underage sales, for example, it might be that we've not had complaints about underage sales in the last 12 months. It might be very limited numbers of complaints, whereas officers' knowledge would seem to suggest that I doubt it's gone away. I doubt underage sales have gone away, so there seems to be a gap in intelligence. So from the strategic assessment, we may well pull a project to say we'll do an intelligence gathering survey on underage sale compliance to see whether there's widespread compliance or non-compliance out there, and then that can lead to further work from that. So that's the idea of the strategic assessment. The plan was to get it done in the first quarter of this year, 2016, in readiness for the business plan from April, because obviously we work in the financial year. So the theory is it's underway as we speak. The information is being gathered by an officer that's used to preparing this report from Blaenau Gwent. So he's consulted with the staff in Torvine to pull information from them in the collation of this report. Then that report will be put together, and then we'll devise the business plan from April, pulling projects out of that that we feel are appropriate based on that intelligence. So that's where the intelligence-led system comes in. So food's slightly different because the FSA still expect us to be visiting and inspecting in accordance with their requirements, but everything else really we can then use this model for. So that's what we're trying to do.
So when would you think it would be completed by?
Where are we now? We're towards the end of February. We were hoping this will be done in the next sort of 2 weeks, really. Yeah, because I need to obviously finalise the business plan for April. So I was discussing it with the officer in Blaenau Gwent just a matter of days ago, and it's underway. It's nearly there.
Norma?
Thank you, Chairman. This is referring to 6.8, and it refers to the challenges being faced by the teams using two databases to record work, which makes it less effective. What would a combined IT system cost? I know you have touched on this, but if there's anything you want to add, you can add it now. You know, invest to save.
It wouldn't actually save money the way the Tascomi system is being marketed at the moment. There are other opportunities that have been presented, though, around IT, specifically with regard to licensing, which we will be considering, because that's a similar cost that we're currently paying, and we'll consider whether that will make a more effective system than we've got. So we have our minds open to anything that comes our way. The actual cost for the Tascomi one that I alluded to earlier, the data transfer is around 15k per authority, and an operating cost of 30,000 a year as well. Now, we currently are paying around 30 for our existing one together, but it's how you recover the 30,000 to transfer all your data across would be the issue. But those are the sort of numbers that we're talking about. It is. But it's not too onerous for staff. It makes it clunky, but it just means that if you're looking for premises, and you know they're Torvine premises, you click on the one. Luckily, they are the same data set, so it's a set that people are familiar with anyway. You just click on the Torvine version, or you click on the Blaenau Gwent version. So it makes it clunky, but it's not. You have to go to a separate computer and do it. It's all on your laptop, but it's just finding it. There are some challenges with regard to staff. Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry, you're going to ask it, you know, sorry.
If you think that in regarding the questions which are there, if you think that there's any additional information which you can add to answer those questions, feel free. Other than that, we'll move on to number 9.
Chair, can I just say something? I mean, we've done in-scrutinies before. If you've got the questions there, Kim, instead of us reading them out, Kim, go 9, 10, 11 and 12. I mean, just say as one of us read out. If you've got the answer, the questions there, we've done that before.
But if, like, the reason why I'm reading them out is for the webcast.
Oh, webcast.
Yes,
the one webcast before.
No,
that's right.
Okay. So, do you think that you can add any further information to questions 8, which is in regard to the IT systems? What would be the financial cost to purchase and install a new IT system? Would the purchase prove to be a financial saving in the long term, i.e. invest to save? It's not spend to save to be run, it's invest to save.
Each system will be a different sum. You know, there are several providers out there, so for each system it's going to be a different amount. It's difficult to say that at the moment that we would benefit. But as I said earlier, if we merge as authorities, then these companies have to change their models of pricing, because if they're looking at, if we were to be a Gwent model again, then they would be targeting that whole area, and it's a different ball game than 22 small authorities. So we're just waiting to see what comes, really. We haven't shut the door on anybody, and we're happy to examine anything that comes that's new, that would improve the working.
In regarding, obviously the staff are going to be using it. Are they, how should I say, if like the reporters using the word like frustration, etc. And so, is it becoming more user-friendly for people to actually, as staff members, to collect the data and input the data?
It's a complicated question, actually, because we've got the two databases, but also they operate in slightly different ways. For example, we mentioned CACS, this is Advice Consumer Service. The way CACS makes referrals to Torfaen is slightly different to the way they make referrals to Blaenau Gwent. The information gets to us in a different format, in a slightly different way. So one of the things we're looking to try and do is improve that, because there are frustrations with that, where the one system is better than the other. We believe it's probably better to go down the Torfaen route for Blaenau Gwent, for example. So these are one of the areas we're going to look to try and improve that, to alleviate some of those frustrations. It's not been too frustrating to staff in terms of having two separate databases as yet, although it's brought its challenges. It does mean, there's a bit of scratching your head about how to input on two different systems. We're trying to align them as much as we can. As I said, they run in slightly different ways, slightly different coding structures and that kind of thing. So we're trying to align them as we're going along. We're making new codes and try to bring them together so they look more the same. So that's all we can do, really, in the current constraints.
Councillor Parish.
We're still on challenges as staff. In regard to staff and the process of change, how are the two authorities going to standardise staff pay and conditions? And is staff morale being affected due to differences between the two authorities?
With regards to the differences, there are differences, but they're not huge.
Okay.
There's a slight overlap of grades between Blaenau Gwent and Torfaen. One extends more into higher figures, and the other one, the other grade extends more. So there are winners and losers in both grades. What we have tried to do, there are a series of reports we'll be going through, is to actually look at the work people are doing to make sure that they are paid the appropriate grade within their own authority for the job. Longer term, we are going to have to look at if we're still in the position where nothing has been decided about local government reorganisation 2-3 years down the line, we would have to look at then there being a to-be transfer type arrangement, because it's not fair on staff to be in that position. Because when we entered it, we thought this was going to be even shorter term than that. It was very much felt we could live with it for now and then see how it went. But HR have given the view that at 2 years maximum, that we can live with this, and then we would have to make a more formal arrangement. So we're going to do that. How staff morale is being affected, actually, I think we've had a significant up to start off with, in that people were actually quite relieved to be merging, because they could see that it was the only way forward. With only 5 members of staff, Torfaen were struggling to meet even the referrals from the Citizen Advice Consumer Service. Just to keep on top of those was drawing people off other work. Actually, to have a few more people that you can talk to about work, that you can actually refer problems to. If we have an actual raid on somebody, or whatever, if Torfaen Trading Standards were going to do it, they had to borrow half the environmental health team to make the numbers up, whereas actually now it's self-contained, and there have been instances where they've gone and done things jointly, and they can manage them within trading standards, which has benefits because everybody knows what they're looking for, whereas if environmental health go, they're being told, this is what I want you to do. So there's almost a training implication that way. So that has been a positive. We're not taking for granted the fact that staff are fairly happy at the moment, though Steve has got commitment to include them in everything and holds regular one-to-ones with staff, so that any problems that are arising can be dealt with fairly quickly before they become a major sore then, sort of thing. So we are trying to get the little things ironed out, but the bigger merger would probably not happen for 2 years, if at all. You know, if in the meantime there's an announcement that we're now joining with whoever, obviously all the work would go into progressing that collaboration. But
going again, sorry. Still on challenges, management this time. 6.10 refers to the managers having to cope with the different requirements of the 2 authorities, especially in licensing. How will this be resolved?
Experience.
Yeah, I think that the report touches on where myself and I think my counterpart in licensing, Steve Bennett from Torfaen as well, I think the way we see the challenges in terms of management is that I'm accountable to 2 sets of masters, really, Blaenau Gwent and Torfaen. So I've got 2 line managers, and I've got 2 sets of political masters. So for my work, the corporate business planning process I have to try and do for Torfaen. I also have to try and do for Blaenau Gwent. So it sort of doubles the workload, but I've got half the time, really, because I've got 2 teams. So there's the challenge, really, that's alluded to in the report. In the short term, we're having to grin and bear it. We're having to just make the best of it and do what we can with it. And we're getting by. We're functioning in a way. We're coping as much as we can with those demands. But longer term, I suppose what Kim has just outlined, the longer term, if we all were to be transferred into one authority, you streamline that to one authority's corporate systems. So at some point or other, that will be the way I see it perhaps being resolved in the longer term. At the moment, we have to make the best of it. In terms of the overall collaboration, where the will is there, there's always a way. So at the moment, the will is there from both authorities to make this work. So we're making it work to the best of our abilities. I've got support of my 2 service managers who understand the demands on the managers. So we are making it work with the will at the moment.
If I could just specifically explain licensing, the scheme of delegation used within Blaenau Gwent means that any referrals for licences because of DBS things or issues with behaviour or whatever for taxi drivers or pub licences, sort of type of thing, all those issues get heard by a full licensing committee rather than a panel. So it's difficult to actually get that process working smoothly because we have a panel to sort of expedite those to get them through the system as soon as possible. Whereas if you're having to call a whole licensing committee, it makes the licensing committee meetings an awful lot longer. Plus the people who want the licenses are waiting for longer. So Steve has been talking to the chair of the licensing committee up in Blaenau Gwent, and he is actually quite positive about being changed. Obviously it's got to go through a formal process to get there, but obviously that would help. But in the meantime, in licensing, they are bringing together the policies, the procedures, so they'll all be aligned. What they can't do in licensing, which is specific to the legislation, is you can't just charge a fee without being able to cost that's your cost to doing it. So because the costs are different on both sides, you can't bring those two fees in line without becoming a joint authority. So that has an additional little tweak that we need to sort of sort out. I don't know quite how yet, but obviously for licensing there are far more specifics regarding the fee setting because they have to be costed per hour at staff rates and at everything else. So we're not far apart, but it means that people are having to make sure they're looking at the right list when they're talking to people.
I can just add to that slightly, because I was involved with licensing prior to the collaboration up in Blaenau Gwent. And just to add on the fees for licensing, they were able to align the driver's fees, I think it was, because the Blaenau Gwent fee, going through the cost recovery process and the fee setting process, came out very close to what Torfaen's was. It was just marginally higher, so the committee made a decision to actually set it at the same as Torfaen's, so they set it below it, so they were covering costs, albeit almost 100%, but not quite. They made this decision to align the fees at that point. So they're getting closer and closer to align things as time will go by.
Number 11. Yes, please.
Still on challenges, financial pressure. The section highlights that due to individual authority financial pressures, there may be a need to prioritise some areas of work and stop doing others. Who will decide the priorities and who will decide the areas of work to be stopped? Will these decisions fit in with Torfaen's corporate plan?
I've put it in because I think it is a real concern, or could be a real concern. But what we have agreed all the way through is that both councils have to approve them. So whether the approval is by it's at executive member level or cabinet member, depending on where the report goes, it has to be approved by both. Now, I don't think in trading standards, because it's based on the intelligence, there is going to be an issue. I think there may be more issues when you come to the broader things of environmental health, because housing may be an issue in one area more than another, depending on what your past performance has been in those areas. You know, at the moment we've got a bit of a project going on in housing on flats above restaurants and takeaways because there is a greater risk. Now, that was seen by us to be a priority because the fire brigade had been to inspect some and been horrified by what they'd found, so we're doing joint things with the fire brigade to do that. Now, that may not be a priority at all for Blaenau Gwent because they may not have that situation in the same numbers. They may have already done that piece of work. So there may be some things where we can agree that, yes, this is only done halfway, but it would still be done by joint staff. So there may be some areas where Torfaen will be the winner on one project, but we'll be the loser on another. And we're quite happy with that. We don't think we're that far apart. But we would have to come to members and agree. We'd have to put forward, this is the proposal, this is what we'd like to do, and let members agree it, really.
Just to add, from an operational point of view in trading standards, the decisions being made every day on priorities. Each day complaints might come through, and each day we have to make a decision: do we investigate that? Do we not? How much resource do we put to that? You make these decisions on an ongoing basis, as well as the strategic stuff and the corporate priorities. We've had to make some decisions fairly early on with it as to what we do about statutory and non-statutory areas of trading standards work. Some of the non-statutory areas, like consumer education, for example, we've had to cut back on. We've had to make those decisions in order to try and make sure we satisfy our statutory obligations, because we can't do it all. So we recognise with something like several thousand premises across Blaenau Gwent and Torfaen, and a small team now, we can't inspect every premise, can't be out there all the time doing everything. So we have to make these strategic decisions and prioritise, and that is really what the strategic assessment is about, to help us make those priorities and pull out the areas of most complaint and the areas perhaps we know less about, where we perhaps need to test the water, or there's new legislation coming in on. So we're making those operational decisions all the time, subject to agreement with the service managers as well in the work plan.
Councillor, could you 13, 14 and 15?
13. In regard to consultation, how will this take place?
It's not taking place as a formal consultation. Staff have been kept informed of the process all the way through, and the unions have been kept up to date with where we are, what we're planning to do next, and things like that. So they're forewarned should any of their members approach them. At the moment, we're managing to keep everybody on side. The environmental health staff know that this is the route we're intending to go. There are some people who have had conversations with me, does this mean jobs are going? We've been very clear up front that the savings are at management level initially, until the service is bedded in, and then from then on, I can't say to any of the staff that you're not going to be subject to cuts, because we know that the next few years are going to be very hard. But that is the focus of it, to actually build a service that can still deliver good services. It's not about savings, and if the savings are there, it's going to be through, like, we're not going to need two heads of public protection, so one will go. So it's down to that then, we share the cost of the remaining one. Okay.
Okay, legal. What formal legal documents are in place between the two authorities? Are both authorities tied to an agreement for a certain length of time? Is there a get-out clause at all?
There are no formal legal documents at the moment, because that is being worked up as a whole, almost like a service level agreement between the two authorities. It's being prepared, that it's with legal input into that process, so there will be a formal legal document. The only legal thing that we've done up to now is to authorise, we've authorised as Torfaen, we've authorised all Blaenau Gwent staff, and Blaenau Gwent have done the same for Torfaen staff, so that staff are fully insured and authorised when they're doing work in each other's areas. We're not going to have a formal tied in to a certain length of time, because I think its external things are going to affect it more than the internal ones within the collaboration. If Welsh Government announced tomorrow that this is the calendar for going forward, well, that then is going to take the collaboration a different route without our say-so. There is a get-out clause, and part of the reason for having a loose arrangement like this is that if any reorganisation was then going to be Torfaen, Monmouth and Newport or whatever, it won't take too much to unpick that, what we've done, and realign with where we put if that happens. there's a clause in there that it may have to be undone and become, yes, yeah. So that is included, so it can be, and really, the staff still employed by that authority. The only thing is that we have lost a few managers and may have to then reappoint managers to cover those posts.
In regarding the legal documentations, you said there will be. If like so, when will be actually take place regarding the legal documentation?
The documents are actually being drawn up at the moment. Both our legal team and Blaenau Gwent's are, I think there's a draft one going back and forth for comments and amendments that will, we hope, cover environmental health as well. So that the one document will cover the whole thing. So.
Financial. Stats indicates that any underspend will be split equally between the two authorities, but any overspend will be agreed by both authorities. Can you expand in regard to how any overspend is going to be split between the two authorities, please?
It would depend what the overspend was for. If the overspend was for a joint project, then that would have to be agreed before it took place, that spend could take place, and that would be split equally. If it was for, say, a legal case which only involved Torvine businesses, where it's our legal process taking it forward, that overspend is Torvine's. Because we're not including all the legal budgets and all like that within, well, I wish we were within the 12 grand each, because that would be cheaper, but we're not including that money in there. The decision as well to prosecute would rest with the authority who is going to bear the cost, so that there's no nasty surprises at the end, really. But we have done work before the collaboration took part over a pricing matter in Tesco's, which Torvine took the case, but we acted on behalf of Blaenau Gwent as well, because that's something you could already do as authorities. And in that case, Blaenau Gwent have signed over their rights to do the prosecution, but Torvine take the risk in those cases. Well, we can use those sort of arrangements, or if it's a joint decision to prosecute, we can do a joint taking of the risk then.
Councillor Parish.
Thank you. This is 8.3 in the report. Now, you have spoken about this before, Kim, but I'll ask you just in case you want to add something. 8.3 states the financial savings to date and how it is difficult to quantify the savings achieved through supplies and services due to different budget structures in each authority, which is understandable. At present, supplies and services budget in Torvine County Borough is 31,000. In 2016-17, a joint budget with both authorities contributing 12,000 will be put in place. Will this be adequate? And regarding travel costs, etc., when will the financial impact be known?
The reason we settled on 12,000 is that in my supplies and services budget, legal costs were included. In Blaenau Gwent's, they weren't. They met from a separate budget.
Right.
We've come to what we think covers the day-to-day costs for both authorities. So sampling costs, new bits of equipment, calibration of equipment, the day-to-day bits that you have. Steve is having to learn our financial system because we are managing the money. So, and in Blaenau Gwent had different responsibilities with regard to budget than he'll have here. So Steve is going to manage this 24,000 pot, which I would estimate is most of the day-to-day ordering. We're not a team with a huge supplies and services budget. Ours also included trading standards contribution towards the data system we use, the Civica APP system that we use. Blaenau Gwent was met through something else. So we came down to, if we keep the same core things in, at least it gives Steve the day-to-day money to plan his work, really, and to plan the team's work. And it means that he can be improving the orders instead of me as well, which will be good. I won't lose the other part of my 30, well, I may lose some of it in the budget settlement, but I will keep that because those items like legal that I just mentioned will still come out of that money. So they will be sitting there, but not used. So we think that 12,000 will probably be okay for what we're putting it forward for. Travel costs, if you, as you imagine, we only started in October. People have only put in their travel claims for October, November, December, up to now. Some will have done January, but others save them for a couple of months. I don't think until we get to April will we know whether ours in Torfaen is more over the second half of the year than the first. But to actually get the detail of, is this on journeys back and forth to offices, we would have to look at each claim sheet. So I can only do it in the total. So that's why I need a 6-month period, to do it, say, over 3 months. And in the run-up to Christmas, there would have been people taking leave. The 6 months will give us a better feel for, is that going to be an issue? So hopefully, that, when they do the end of year roundup, I can say, well, what's the difference between the first 6 months and the second for Torfaen? And Steve can do the same for the Blaenau Gwent guys. All right?
Councillor Burnett, number 17.
Thank you, Chair. Communication. How Torfaen communicated with its residents to ensure that the services which we are responsible for will continue?
We haven't particularly communicated with its residents because I'm hoping they won't have noticed any difference at all because it should have happened seamlessly. They will phone trading standards and they will speak to trading standards and they won't know that it's being delivered differently. Other than, it does say on our website it's delivered differently. It does say on the headed note paper we're using now, but that's, I'm hoping that no one will see any difference to the service other than an improvement.
Just to add to that, Chair, for me, just the only difference, we are being a little bit stricter on using CACS for their intended purpose, CACS being the Citizens Advice Consumer Service, so where people want consumer advice, etc., we are pushing people towards CACS in the first instance, and the website review we've carried out, we've streamlined the web pages from what was something like 8 or 10 pages on the Torfaen site for trading standards. We've come down to 3. So there'd be 3 in Blaenau Gwent, exactly the same. And the overview page, the trading standards, sort of what is trading standards bit, explains at the outset there's a collaboration going on the first page. But then where they want consumer advice, we are directing very much to CACS in the first instance. We'll pick up anything referrals that come to us, we'll pick up. So that's the only thing perhaps they may see a difference. We are just for capacity reasons, really, we're having to use CACS to its fullest, which is what it's there for. So we are doing that.
But we were we were heading that direction anyway in Torfaen because we couldn't cope with the volume of calls. So.
Well, I did have one question. You both just answered it. I had a own personal problem with, then I rang up and it did go through. It was the CACS it's called, yeah. Then, Kim's department picked up there and came back. That's fine. And that was when you say training standards, but in the first instance it goes to consumer advice. Then they take it on. Then if you want to lead it on, then that's the only question I had on that one.
Councillor Parish, number 18.
Thank you. Implications, personnel. From a cost and time stance, has much time and expense been drawn from the HR, financial and IT department, which need to be taken into account when it comes to the setting up of merger?
There has been some time involved with all of them. Most of it in set meetings. We have a meeting where a whole morning is set aside for a meeting, and they come in, we have an hour on one, an hour on the other, hour on the other. So HR's contribution is probably only 4 meetings worth.
Something like that.
At an hour a time, because we're not merging staff. Now, before we actually went into it, I had several meetings with HR to make sure that we were doing things correctly, that this was allowed, that we weren't breaking any rules in doing it, or whether to-be transfer was the way we should be looking. But it was agreed that the loose collaboration was ideal in this situation. So that is probably the sole involvement they've had, because there haven't been any other HR issues really to resolve. Finance, there have been a few extra meetings with Torfaen Finance, because we're the ones who are going to take on, we're owning the budget heading, and we'll be billing Blaenau Gwent for their share of the money, and finance staff have spent time with Stephen explaining how our budget system works. The IT department, I think, has been the biggest contributor, but I wouldn't like to say how much time it's taken, because we've had times where Torfaen have done their bit, but Blaenau Gwent haven't done theirs, so there's been no progress because one person hasn't done something, and vice versa. And I don't think they accepted it as a project to take forward and thought it'd be very easy to do. And I think it's not turned out quite as easy. But so I honestly can't quantify that. I don't know whether they could put more of a figure on it, but I can't.
So there won't be any recharging as such, if you like, at all?
No.
If stroke when environmental health, if like, will there be additional costs to set that up?
There will be no costs of the purchase of any equipment, because both environmental health teams are fully agile working. They have all the equipment already, and we're hoping, crossing fingers and touching wood here, that the issues we went through with trading standards, although they were quite painful for them at the time and seemed drawn out, they have acted as the guinea pigs, and we think now, IT are quite confident that the solution this time will be very quick, because they know what works and what didn't work, and as Steve said, the Wi-Fi being installed has actually taken one of the big stumbling blocks out of the picture.
Councillor Parish, Karen.
Thank you. I'm looking at risks now, financial, since section 9.1, and it's also touched on in 6.13. Risks. Is the council open to risk from an informal arrangement?
I don't think we are. I think that the informal arrangement suits the times we're in, really. So there will be some small risks, I'm sure, but I don't think they're significant. We've gone through the what if somebody doesn't do the work. They're saying, well, that's always the same with your own staff, so it's not an increased risk. They're all experienced staff. They've, we all know what they're capable of, and we're using them to those capabilities, sort of thing. I think that the main risks I put in there, and the reason why we're trying to keep the environmental health one to be in 6 to 8 months, I think staff, when it was that we were hoping to be in place by August, and then it's no, we'll now work for September, now it's going to be October. I think it's better to say, right, 8 months we'll be in, and if we're before that, it's a bonus, so that people aren't having that sort of the rug pulled out to them. Reputationally, I'm confident that we can deliver a better service together than we could on our own, and I think we were in a greater danger of reputational risk from not being able to do something when we were acting individually. The difficulties in agreeing the team plan I've put in, because I have to acknowledge it, but I think for trading standards that's the least likely to have a difference, as Steve has explained. They are still there, but I would say that I think any risks of failure are mitigated because of the positive approach from everybody. Everybody wants it to work, and staff are approaching it with that mindset that it's going to work. And we've had some small positives that have then reinforced that as well. You know, licensing did a bit of an investigation on one of the taxi ranks within Torvine, but using Blaenau Gwent member staff who could approach as a customer would, and got some interesting responses, whereas if one of our own licensing officers, they're well known. So there have been some small positives even on things like that, you know. And the joint work together on raids and things for trading standards has been excellent, and it's been helped, has been given both directions, so people can see that it will work in the longer run. So I can't say that there is no risk at all, but everything nationally has been pushing that trading standards in particular should be delivered in a bigger area, and we've noticed just having 10 staff instead of 5, you can cope with the little the nuisance bits, really, where someone phones in and says, I can't come in today. You know, they're easily absorbed in a team of 10. In a team of 5, it's complete panic then, who's going to do this and who's going where, you know. So it is having a positive impact at the moment.
And the last question is question 20, the monitoring and evaluation. The report indicates that the performance of the team will be measured against set targets. Who sets the targets? How are they set? And then the supplementary question is, as part of the report, the committee asks for the results of any set targets, however, none have been provided. Is there a reason for this, and how are you determining whether or not the merged teams are successful?
Various sort of targets really apply to trading standards work. The first thing to mention is to draw your attention to Appendix 1, where you've got the work plan there, which sets the targets there and the target date, etc. So that's the first point. They've been set by the managers. Myself and my 2 service managers have all agreed this, and we're working with the staff to deliver on those areas. So we measure those. There will be legitimate reasons why some things may not be met. It may well be that a pre-planned survey will get pushed back into the new financial year because we reacted to some intelligence coming in and took our resources to something else. So we understand that, and that does happen. And so it's not necessarily a bad thing that we don't meet a particular target if we roll it back. It's just prioritising, as I said, the ongoing decisions we make. So that's the first area. There are other targets set to us nationally by things like the Food Standards Agency, which sets out targets in terms of feed inspection and food standards inspections. So they set those targets, and we will endeavour to meet them. We know that probably prior to the collaboration in 2015, both authorities were struggling with capacity, and probably with all the change that was coming in. There was also changes to legislation in trading standards. Some widespread changes came in October with the new Consumer Rights Act. And all of these things had an impact on our delivery in 2015. So what we look to do is improve on that in 2016-17 and in next year's business plan. So those targets were measured by managers and set by the FSA for food. And the other stuff is in the work plan. There are other operational targets which I set with staff as well, in terms of the Torvine system. We have a work smart system in Torvine, which involves one-to-one performance reviews with staff. So there are individual staff targets as well set into that. That's been, Kim will be aware of, and has been agreed with both the service managers and the staff concerned. So there are all manner of targets really that are operational. Some are with staff and some are operational in terms of bigger projects and inspection targets.
Because obviously in Appendix 1 they're all about operational, aren't they, if you like, as opposed to call it the officers doing food inspections, etc. Because you've highlighted, if you like, there's a big leap there in regarding the work that's been undertaken in regarding food inspections, and that's the sort of the data which I believe could have supported this report in a big way, because that's what people tend to look at, as opposed to just purely the operational side, if you like. I don't know if that data still can be provided, if you like. I'm not sure in regarding what specific data you will be providing, other than to say if there are data which can be provided, which is then at grassroots level, if you like. I think that would be beneficial, if I to look over anyway. I don't know if members are in agreement with that. Yeah, that's fine.
If I could just come back on that. The stats, like the number of inspections we do, are all in Ffynnon. We collect those anyway. It's part of our overall team plan and the plan for the whole of the neighbourhood's public protection area. And so they are one of the indicators in there, and they're on the front page, you know, how many high-risk inspections have been undertaken for trading standards. Now, I wouldn't have thought at the moment, again, it's a bit early days, I would say, if at the end of the year we can look at them, we may see an improvement on the second half of the year, and that would be easy to see looking at the figures. Or we may need to say, well, this year's a year of change, let's see where we are next year. But we can certainly provide those, but I would say really it needs to wait till April for the end of the year figures to be in. We routinely do the food standards figures. They get taken off on a system called LAMES, which takes them automatically from our system straight onto theirs. So it's difficult to look at in-year figures on those to the same extent and the same accuracy. But when we actually put the whole yearly figures in, it will become apparent, and certainly we can report those both, you know, before and after, if as much as we can. To ask to do it now, it means we're partway through quarters. You know, it's not going to be a very accurate figure. But I would say...
How then are you determining whether or not the merged teams are successful then? If you are not monitoring, if you like, the targets, if you like. Well, that's not. If like, because there's not so much data there, as you've said, and so basically, how are you determining whether the merger is a success or not?
Well, we will be looking at those targets, at those figures, but we can't really draw any conclusions from them until we get to the end of the quarter. So we will be monitoring it on that basis. But
so
also,
how are you monitoring it now, though?
Well,
if you're not doing it,
based on what we were intending to achieve, Steve has set individual targets for officers, which he will be monitoring that they're meeting those without us looking at the overall target until the end of the... You normally agree with staff that this is what I expect of you, and you then keep an eye on their progress, and if they are slipping behind, what are the reasons for it? Do you need to take some work and put it to somewhere else? So it is being monitored, but the final figures won't be... The big figure won't be available till you get to the end of the year. But some of the figures, that Steve had mentioned earlier, at the feed inspections, that any in that box is going to be an improvement for Torfaen, because the last 5 years we have done 0. And now this year, all of our high-risk ones have been completed. Some routine visits to others have been done, because it's being done by a member of staff from Blaenau Gwent. So there is, in that instance, we've gone from nothing to actually meeting our statutory obligations in one 6-month period, which is excellent.
I think it would be also good to identify in which the areas in which we haven't done so good as well, if you like, because obviously there could be challenges as well, and so if there are any of those stats, I think that those also need to be supplied as well at some point. Okay. If there isn't any other questions, could I thank you? We're not going to go on to the additional question. I think that's been answered throughout. So thank you very much indeed for attending, Steve. Thank you. If we can pause the webcasting at the moment, could we pause it, please? Okay. Sorry. Committee members, you have now had the opportunity to scrutinise and ask specific questions in regard to the suggested scrutiny activity. I now open the table up for discussion and whether you would like to make any recommendations to your findings. What I would like to do in the first instance is read the scrutiny activity again so that we know exactly what the recommendations are to be based around, and they are. The committee is asked to, 1, assess whether the collaboration is delivering the intended benefits and outcomes. 2, consider whether the collaboration should continue in the same way to include environmental health services. If we can look at them individually, can I bring in Helen to see from the discussion, is there any predominant recommendations which have come out of the discussion, please?
Thank you, Chair. Listening to the debate this afternoon, there was a few points that I made that you may wish to consider as recommendations. The first is the environmental health merger follows a staged approach. It's the same as the trade and standards merger. I think you were impressed with the staged approach there. Secondly, you may want to consider they evaluate the amount of mileage utilised to ensure there's no unexpected rises and budget pressures. Thirdly, I think you were impressed, or it sounded like you were impressed with the staff meetings and the way they've been conducted. So you may want to consider recommending the productive staff meetings are supported to continue to improve local knowledge and operational aspects of the team so that momentum and staff morale is maintained. Lastly, investigations around the joint IT systems for licensing and the Citizens and Consumer Advice Service are taken forward, taking into consideration the views of the staff using those systems.
Any comments for Councillor Burnett?
Thank you, Chair. My observations from some of the things Steve and Kim were saying, it seems as though it seems to be improving because it's expanded the team. As Kim said, if there's 5 in a team and you have 2 absences with leave or sickness, that really melts it right down. And I know within business, to cope with that pressure, it just doesn't exist. But when you have another team working with them, mentioning licensing and taxis where somebody else comes in new, and they seem to be uplifting staff as well. So when you've got 2 in collaboration, I think it sounds as though the staff seem to be a bit better with it. It's taken a lot of pressure off, and it is seem to be improving our standards as well.
Councillor Parish?
Yeah. There are definite advantages, and because they've done it so informally, I think that's been an advantage too, because it hasn't put pressure on them. You know, they've worked through it. So, yes, there are advantages, and I'm surprised, actually, to hear how many advantages have been obtained from this. And, yes, I would agree with Helen's recommendations.
In regarding number 2, it says consider whether the collaboration should continue in the same way to include environmental health. I believe that there's a consensus of opinion to say that basically it should at the end of the day, and to continue to develop it in exactly the same way as they have with the trading standards. In regarding number 1, assess whether the collaboration is delivering the intended benefits and outcomes. Again, I believe they are, if you like, and that's been mentioned in regarding the comments which you've just brought forward now, and the fact that if like there are a couple of recommendations, and the recommendations in which has been read out, I think concur with everyone's thoughts as well. And so if everyone is in agreement, can I or can someone else recommend that they are taken forward as stated, as previously stated?
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for that. If we can go on to agenda item 8, which is the date of the next meeting. Can I bring in Jackie? And if you could take members through the future arrangements, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Within your basket of items, there's an item on the implementation of the Housing Act, which includes analysing the impact of the Joint Housing Solution Service. This ties in neatly with the referral that you may recall making from the Joint Committee on Housing Solution Service, and Neil Howells has agreed to prepare that report for you. Okay.
And the date?
The date of the next meeting is the 20th of April.
And that concludes the business for today, so I hereby close the meeting. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.